Yo,
Yo, yo, yo.
how you doing?
I'm doing all right, doing all right. Where am I on your screen? Because you're here.
You're there.
Oh, well, I think it's the multiverse that's coming.
That's always very confusing, isn't it? Okay, so it might take a while for people to appear because there were two streams set up for today. I don't know how I managed to achieve that, but there were. So I had to quickly delete one and open another. So let's hope people weren't sitting on the other one waiting to see, and then it was this one anyway. Okay, so right. So we've got a few people rocking up now. So why don't we, Yevgeny? Oh, look, there's some new backgrounds. Oh, it's a bit of fruit salad there for you. Bubbles in the dark.
What else you got?
Leaves.
I love
Leaves. You see
these.
I quite like the leaves. I think they're my preferred over the old. Oh, we can do background music as well. Look, we can feed the ducks. I don't know. How do we feel about the background music, folks? Are we into the background music or should we just kind of go normal style? Well, I can turn it down as well, I think.
I mean,
It's quite
yeah,
chill, isn't it?
yeah, it is quite chill, actually. Yeah, I agree.
I'm going to leave
Very.
it on unless folks object. Oh, yeah. Someone says they feel like they're in an elevator. That's hilarious. I'm going to leave it on. We're feeding the ducks, apparently. This is what this music is, folks. I might change it up a little bit later. If anyone finds it distracting, just let me know. You have to kind of vary things slightly, don't you? Okay, there we go. I think that's a decent level. Right, so shall we do intros then, Yevgeny? Explain to people who we are, why we're here, try and help people understand the reason of the universe, all of that stuff. I'm going to apologize for how many layers I'm wearing. It is so cold in my house. I don't understand why. Probably because my children have left all the windows open. So the heating's probably blasting out and just kind of like releasing energy into the world outside. Right. Do you want to give a spiel or will I? Let's get
Yeah,
going.
I can do the spiel.
Okay,
And then
do the spiel.
I'll do the first part of the spiel and then I'll hand over to you.
Okay.
Right. So, folks, most of you probably know us because you guys are watching us on our YouTube channel. And so, quick intro. Both Gigi and I, we are the co-founders of Day One Careers. We started the business, or I'd say our individual businesses that later merged into Day One Careers. We started them ourselves. So I'm going to tell you about my journey, and then Gigi will tell you about hers. So my journey was that I was a senior marketer at Amazon. I was also an interviewer and hiring manager. And at some point in time, I noticed that quite a few candidates whose functional profiles were a really good fit to the roles that I hired or interviewed for, they weren't really great at behavioral interviewing. And so what I started doing is giving them a little bit of coaching. So instead of failing them at phone screen one, I'd give them a little bit of interview coaching, and then I would progress them to the next person to do the phone screen too. And then I would casually monitor how things were going. And lo and behold, I figured that if you give people just a little bit of interview coaching already, their chances at progressing to the next stages of interviews are increasing. So who would have thought that that actually works? So just in my last 2 months at Amazon, I've created Day One Careers as a business, and I started coaching, and I've created courses. And then at some point in time, while I was already at Apple and running this business, someone told me that there's this Amazon interview whiz, and she's amazing, and you guys are the only two most credible people in the industry. And they said you guys should meet. So I met with Gigi, and then we decided to merge our businesses together because I thought she was awesome. Still is. And there you go. So a few months after, we merged our businesses under the brand Day One Careers, and then the rest is history. Now over to you. What was your journey? How did you end up in this whole Amazon interview prep thing?
So I was a expert. I was a bar raiser whilst I was at Amazon. I interviewed. Sorry, folks, it's been a long day. Hundreds and hundreds of people, and I started to spot weird patterns. People would just do things that seemed really random to me, but lots of people kept doing these random things. So there was obviously a pattern. So I decided to ask a couple of my candidates why it was that they had decided to do this thing, and they pointed me towards some YouTube channels. At the time, it was a while ago, there weren't that many YouTube channels, but I went and had a look at these YouTube channels and discovered that one of these channels was being run by someone who had never worked at Amazon in their life, and another one of those channels was being run by someone who had a very specific um, scope of experience in Amazon, which was leading them to provide really good advice for that particular population that they served and knew well. But that advice didn't really apply to anybody else. So I decided I would set up my own YouTube channel. Amazon supported me, promoted me. It was fabulous. Started building up the YouTube channel, left Amazon and wondered whether I could turn this into a little bit of a side hustle. And here we are. And then, as Evgeny said, we met, and here we are. By the way, my husband was really freaked out at me saying, I'm going to go meet some random Russian man at a pub about like 40 minutes away. But there we go. That's history. Right, folks, how this is going to work is you have this kind of comment section here on the right-hand side of the page where you can type your questions in. So please type in any question that you have for us, a little bit of guidance on what's feasible in terms of questions. Please don't just come and ask us, do we have any advice? You've got an interview tomorrow. It's far too generic. We could spend hours and hours providing you tons and tons of advice, but sure, we've already done that. That's what the YouTube channel is all about. So please don't just say, can I have some general advice? Because that's not going to be very efficient. On the flip side, on the other end of the spectrum, we can't offer specific guidance on functional kind of interview mechanisms. There are tens of thousands of job families in Amazon. We are not functional experts, from everything to a pre-construction engineer, to lawyers, to solutions architects, to marketers, to product designers, to merchandisers, to catalog managers, to it will keep going. We can't be functionally expert in all of those things. So if you have a specific functional question, I'm afraid we're unlikely to be able to answer that. But pretty much anything between those two ends of the spectrum, we can certainly have a go at. So bang your question down here on the right. There is a character limit in the comments section. So if you run out of characters, just put the number 1 at the end and keep writing. And if you still run out of characters, put 2 at the end of that and keep writing until you actually have written all of your questions. So on that note, why don't we then get started on answering questions? Please do not be shy, lads. Just, oh, sorry, it's very British and
Don't be
very
shy, lads. Love it.
culturally insensitive. So don't be shy, everybody. Please do put your questions down and we will have a good go at answering them. So I think so far we've only got one question. So let's just pick this up from Harsh. And then hopefully, whilst we're answering this for Harsh, other people will ask some questions. Okay, so my loop got over on Thursday and I had 4 rounds. So I think you're saying your loop finished on Thursday and you had 4 rounds. Okay, so loop 4 interviews. Thank you for your tips. Oh, you definitely spread the word. Right, thank you very much. I would like to know, how many days does the results come, or should I follow up with a nice message? I'm anxious. Okay. So totally understandable to be anxious. I don't think anyone who's ever interviewed anywhere wasn't anxious when it came to waiting for the result. In terms of how many days it's supposed to take, Amazon has a SLA, a service level agreement, which everyone is supposed to meet inside the organization, which is for early rounds, whether it's a phone screen 1 or a phone screen 2, you're supposed to get your answer within 2 days. When it comes to loop, you are supposed to get your answer within 5 working days. You don't count the last day of your interviews. So if you had your interview on Thursday, Friday would be your first working day. Monday is your second working day. That's today. Tuesday would be your third working day. Wednesday would be your fourth working day. And Thursday would be your 5th working day. So I would expect your recruiter to get back to you ideally before then, but probably not. So kind of Thursday, Friday. If you still haven't heard anything by Monday of next week, I would suggest you do just send a polite email just saying you obviously really enjoyed the interview experience, super keen on the job. Does the recruiter have an update for you? And leave it at that and see what happens. But fingers crossed, you will hear back before then and you won't have to send that chaser email. Okay, folks, we don't have any other questions. So unless we have
I'm
questions,
free to go.
we're free to go. Yes, there's no chicken for dinner tonight, Evgeny.
No.
No, it's no chicken. Trying to be more vegetarian. Maeve has decided that she feels bad eating animals and she wants to go more vegetarian. So I've been making loads of vegetarian dishes which she doesn't like. So I just
No,
keep eating them.
it's since I'm married to someone from South India who is South Indian descent. In places like Sri Lanka, there's food, and then there's non-vegetarian food. So
Yes, food is the core, and then non-veg is
exactly.
for heathens. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, folks. If we don't have any more questions, we may as well wrap up. Any folks, any questions? I think this is my fault, Yevgeny, because I set up the stream twice over. And maybe other folks were headed for the other stream. I don't know. So, folks, I'm going to give it a couple more seconds. And seriously, if there are no more questions, then I don't know what to do. I could sing a song for you if you like, but I'm not sure whether that would be
Oh look, John
useful.
Farr is working on a
Oh,
question.
thank you, John. Thank you for letting us know. I appreciate that. Right, let's just pick this one because Franleska Garcia, I'm sorry if I have mispronounced that. Please apologize to your parents if I have. So, is there a reason why Amazon does not give feedback? Do you want to answer this one, Evgeny? Or do you want me to do it?
Um, Gosh, I to be honest, there I wouldn't even be able to disclose the official policy, even if I knew it.
Okay, well, I'll share what I know. So, I mean, as far as mm, there's urban legend, let's put it that way, because I've never seen any official policy document that has this information is in it. But there is urban legend rolling around Amazon and also rolling around LinkedIn if you care to look. So urban legend essentially falls into two parts. The first part is they don't want to get sued, right? Um, any type of feedback that they give you, it is possible that someone might not phrase it quite correctly, or a candidate might take it slightly out of context, etc. And I believe, again, urban legend, that there were instances in the long and distant past where candidates did receive feedback and some kind of litigation or threat of litigation, again, urban legend, started to get rolling. So the policy is essentially there to protect the shareholders and protect the organization from just information being maybe slightly misrepresented or on the other side slightly misconstrued. And I think this is a very common policy across many, many large corporates. This just isn't specific to Amazon. The second part of the urban legend is around the protection of the interviewers themselves. Excuse me, my dog's barking. Um, if an if a recruiter were to share with you some specific piece of feedback that would be useful, because generic feedback is pointless, right? But specific feedback is what you'd want to receive from your recruiter. So if they were to give you a specific piece of feedback, it probably wouldn't be that hard for you to identify which of the interviewers was the interviewer who made that point in the debrief. At that point, that interviewer becomes quite exposed, right? We're all very easily accessible across social media, both our professional and potentially our personal networks. And it's not beyond the realms of possibility that you might get a disgruntled candidate who takes exception to something they believe an interviewer has said and then goes and hunts them down on social media. So, for the protection of their interviewers, so that you can, in debrief, be as honest and as open as is necessary for a good debrief, the policy is there, urban legend, to ensure that interviewers know that that information isn't going to make it back to the candidate and they don't have to worry that they're going to end up being stalked on social media. So again, there's no firm policy document that I ever read on it, but that's certainly the urban legend that I learned whilst I was there, and very much kind of supported and validated by everything that I've heard on LinkedIn ever since. And I believe it's a very common policy among lots of organizations, both large and small, pretty much for the same reasons. Okay, do you want to pick the next one?
Cool. All right. There we go. Why is it the best way to get started? Or, no, sorry, what is the best way to get started to prepare for the bar raiser or LP round? So, let's separate your question into two. So, if you're asking what's the best way to prepare for the LP rounds, and then within those LP rounds for your bar raiser round, as opposed to for your non-tech, as opposed to your technical non-LP rounds. So I'm going to focus on your essentially your behavioral interviews. So what's the right way to prepare for behavioral interviews? So I could go on and on about this. We have an entire paid course suite with over 20 hours of content that's telling you exactly how to do that. But to give you a quick checklist of the best practices on how to prepare for your behavioral interviews with Amazon, it would go something like this. First things first, you need to understand what Amazon is actually looking for from you as a candidate when they interview you on every leadership principle. Ideally, you also want to understand what leadership principles they will be interviewing you on when you interview for your job and which ones they will skip, because it's extremely unlikely that they will interview you on all, right? So a typical L6 interview, for example, I'm saying typical because it's not always the same. A typical L6, for example, in my experience, would have been 10 leadership principles. It could be fewer, but it's not 60. That's the point. So you can whittle down the list of plausible leadership principles on which you're going to be interviewed by either studying the job description yourself, watch some of the videos that we've got on our channel where Gigi explains how you can do that. If that doesn't work, just book a service from her where she will identify the leadership principles in the job description for you, which are most likely that you're going to be interviewed on. So once you've identified those LPs, once you have understood what they are really looking for under every leadership principle, you need to start preparing your stories. In order to prepare your stories, you have to almost like write queries to your memory. So ask yourself, go down the memory lane. When was the time when you were in a situation where your actions were shining and displaying the behaviors that Amazon is looking for under that particular leadership principle? You need two stories per every leadership principle. And make sure that in every single story, you demonstrate impact. So Amazon loves numbers, right? Companies like Amazon love numbers. They want to see what you have done that was actually useful and adding value to the company or to your team or to your business division, not just activity for activity's sake. So that is, in general, I think what I can share with you in the kind of context of this session. But if you have any other questions, feel free to join our community and chat with others and chat to our bot and other resources. Anything you'd add, Gigi?
No, other than to say, good point to drop that in now, folks. Stay until the end. Don't leave because we have incredible freebies, the best freebies you'll find on Amazon interview preparation on the planet. We are very, very confident about that. Okay, so I'm going to pick up Indolfo's question, which actually seems to be in reverse order. So hang on. I'll just pick up that bit down there. Okay, so you had your loop and the recruiter told you did fine. The team thinks that you're not the best fit for the role and they will look for another position. Okay. Do you think it's okay if you apply directly to another role, or should you wait for the recruiter to look on their side? And then we have 3, it's been over a month since I had a loop messages from Indolfo. So, okay, we get that it's been over a month. Okay, so the answer to that is super simple, is you need to look for roles yourself. Putting it bluntly, an Amazon recruiter's job is to fill roles for Amazon. An Amazon recruiter's job is not to find candidates' roles in Amazon. So the minute you are no longer a hot prospect for the role that they are accountable, you slide down their priority list enormously, all the way to the bottom. So, although recruiters are always good intentions, I don't think anyone attempts to lead anyone astray when they say that. The reality is, you are not going to be a priority for them. So, own your own destiny, take control of your own future. You look at the jobs board and see if there are roles that you are interested in. Apply directly through the jobs board and then contact your ex-recruiter, send them the link to the role that you applied for, tell them you've applied, and ask them to put in a good word for you for the other recruiter that's going to be hiring for that role. That way, you get the best of both worlds. Hopefully, you get the support and some good words from someone inside who knows about you. Equally, you're not passively waiting for someone to come along and pass you over an opportunity. You're proactive and you're getting your resume back out there. Hope that helps. Do you want to pick the next one, Yevgeny?
Yes. I think the next one here is this one
John. Yes.
from John. So John says, I see the difference between the writing assessment instructions and recommendations online. So the instructions say use a white paper format, yet I see recommendations to use the star format. And the question is, how much leeway do I have to interpret the instructions? Right. So, I mean, it is. I think one thing to check, John, is what role are you applying for? Because it may be that if you're a technical writer, for example, it's possible that they might tailor that writing exercise for you. So if you are listening to this response, and I'm going to give you a more general response, maybe just add this bit of context into the chat box and we can revisit. Okay. So if you are applying for a role that does not require any specific technical writing expertise, and if it's essentially a generic writing question that they have, it's usually a choice of two questions, then I would interpret the guidelines in terms of white paper versus star as a generic guideline in terms of write a structured 1.5 page memo. Structured meaning with some sort of beginning, some sort of middle, some sort of end, right? Some intro, some development of arguments, and some conclusion. I wouldn't overburden your brain with any more other considerations except for that one. This all obviously is if you have a generic writing test. If you are, for example, a technical writer, then and you're expected to know what a white paper format is, then follow that format. But from
Yeah,
what
no,
I can,
John's saying he's a technical program manager. So basically, all this is what they're just trying to tell you is don't write a PowerPoint. It's as simple as that.
I
When
mean,
when they're saying use a white paper format, it's exactly what Yevgeny says. That's what they're trying to say is don't write a PowerPoint.
yeah, don't write a
Um,
PowerPoint. And there's, and again, look, what's a white paper format, right? It's an intro, it's a problem statement, it's some sort of analysis, and the recommendation or a call to action. Like it's just a format for for a writing structure. So yeah, that's effectively what they're doing. So don't overburden yourself. Just do your best in terms of how you interpret it, and that's it. Good luck.
okay, cool. Right, so I'm just going to quickly pick Harsh, just so that Harsh knows we're not ignoring him, but I'm not really sure this is what our function is. So, yes, Amazon is constantly expanding, especially in India. Yep. What are some core benefits and perks of joining Amazon? You applied for Prime Video category. Go to their website, Harsh. We're here absolutely to help you do well in your actual interview. We're not here to sell the benefits of Amazon. So go look at the website, see what come to your own conclusions. Amazon will do a perfectly good job of selling themselves to you. That's not something that we're going to be doing. So let me just move on. Back to Franleska. I'm so sorry. I'm probably mispronouncing this horribly as well. So apologies if I am. Okay, Amazon uses questions about your past experience, but is it possible to ever get a hypothetical question? And what would be the best way to answer? Is there a smart methodology for hypothetical? Okay, so if you kind of break the interviews out into two flavors of interviews, we've got our leadership behavioral interviews and we've got our functional interviews. The leadership behavioral questions should never come in hypotheticals because, to your point, they're trying to understand the things that you have actually done in your past. Functional interviews, where they're trying to understand your skill set, it is very possible that you will be asked hypothetical questions. How would you solve this particular type of problem? How would you address this particular type of issue? Um, we don't have any specific recommendations for how you would approach that type of hypothetical question, because actually it's very function specific. How you would approach answering a hypothetical question as a software development engineer, how would you build a scalable system to manage blah blah blah, would be very different to how you would answer a hypothetical question if you were a PPC SEO marketing manager. So parking the functional piece and going back to the behavioral piece, as I mentioned, in theory, no one should be asking you hypothetical questions, because Amazon's entire philosophy for recruiting is based on the principle that they want to know what you've done in the past, because it's a predictor of what you'll do in the future. So hypotheticals do not fit into that type of philosophical model. However, there are occasions when interviewers, although they shouldn't do, decide to go rogue and ask hypothetical questions. The best advice that we can offer you, should that situation happen, is try to turn those hypotheticals into actual behaviorals. So try and, rather than answer the hypothetical with some kind of made up nonsense about what you would do in that situation, try and come up with a story from your career past where actually you have experienced that situation, and answer it as if it was a behavioral question. Now, if you don't have any examples of that in the past, you're probably stuck and you're going to have to go down the behavioral route. But let's hope, if you are being interviewed for the right type of experience that you have historically, any hypothetical that they can come up with for the particular skill set, job family that you're interviewing for, hopefully you'll have come across some kind of a similar situation at some point in your past, even if it's not the recent past. And that would be my advice on that one. Do you have anything to add, Yevgeny?
Nope, nope. That's exactly what I would have recommended.
Do you want to pick the next one?
Yes. Okay. So this one is for from BugGov. I received an offer in November. I failed the initial loop. Then later, I got an offer via a mini loop, but I declined for medical reasons. Do you think the next mini loop is going to be hard? And my previous mini loop was 3 interviews and was very easy, was more like conversational interviews. So will my next mini loop be similar? It's very hard to know, Bargav.
And I think there's no guarantees that there will be another mini loop.
No, no, there isn't. But let's assume there is. I mean, I don't know. Let's assume that he gets himself another mini loop. Why not? Um, there's simply no way to know. And by the way, what's easy to you may not be easy to someone else. Like I know that some folks prefer to, I guess, to be able to tell the entire story first, not have a conversational interviewer, and then just have a couple of follow-ups. And some other folks prefer a more conversational format. So yeah, just get yourself prepared for absolutely anything. There is an entire bell curve distribution of the styles and qualities of interviewers at Amazon, and you can get absolutely anything. But good luck. I hope it works out for you this time.
Cool. So, just looking at the time, we may as well pause momentarily here, Yevgeny. We have a favor to ask you folks. Obviously, you can see that we put a massive amount of effort into this channel. It's been running for about 4 years now. There are hundreds of videos here, and obviously, we add these live videos every single week. I dread to think how many hours of our lives have been invested in this YouTube channel. And we do it because we believe it to be a privilege, and we really genuinely want to support you and help you be successful. And we have managed to do that for thousands and thousands and thousands of people. But we do need something in return from you for our effort. And that is, anytime that you look at a piece of content on the YouTube channel, or indeed you join us here on this live stream, please do give the content a thumbs up and maybe drop in a comment. What that does is it tells the YouTube algorithm that it's done two things really well. It's successfully shared this content with the right type of person, the person who would want to watch it, and that the person that would want to watch it has actually found this content to be good. What that then does is just boosts the profile of our channel and that particular video for those particular keywords in the algorithm, which means people like you get exposure to the very, very high quality content that we provide here on the Day One Careers channel, and perhaps avoid some of the less high quality, less helpful content that is elsewhere on YouTube. So With that in mind, folks, what I'm just going to ask you to do is just ever so quickly, please just give this particular stream a little bit of a thumbs up. I can see here on my left how many likes we have. Oh, we've got the fireworks. So I will know whether you have or haven't done this. But for 30 odd seconds, I'm just going to play you a little bit of an interlude. And whilst I do that, please do give it a like and a thumbs up. We'd be really grateful. It's just a tiny ask in return for an enormous amount of effort on our part. So it is a little bit loud, folks. So if you have headphones on like me, you might just want to pop them to the back of your ears, and we'll run VC and you can give us a little thumbs up. Here we go.
Please like the stream now. Please like the stream now. Please like the stream now. Please like the stream. 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 Like the stream.
Okay, done. Right. Do you want to pick the next one, Yevgeny?
I can pick the next one.
Or did you do the last one? I've lost track now.
I think I did. I did the last one.
I'll pick the next one then. Okay.
You do that.
Okay. All right. So, is that a cheese slicer? It is. It's a block of cheese and a cheese slicer. Very good. I used to have one. I don't have one of those anymore. Have you got a cheese slicer?
I don't have a cheese slicer. I have a vegetable slicer, but I don't have a cheese slicer.
Gotta have a cheese slicer. I feel my kitchen is lacking something without a cheese slicer. Okay, for LP questions such as customer obsession, okay, so such as customer obsession, is an experience that improved the productivity of a customer with only my simple effort, example, a simple script, also okay experience or not impactful? Oh, you're Jin. Hey, Jin. Nice to meet you. Okay. Let me have a go at answering this, Yevgeny, and then please follow up if you think that I've misunderstood or if what I say isn't resonating with you. Okay, so the first thing to be thinking about is the most impactful part of your story is the bit where you actually describe you behaving in the ways that the leadership principle would want you to behave. So it is almost impossible for me to tell you that this would be impactful for customer obsession because I have no idea the lengths to which you went in order to be able to deliver this simple effort. Because what you're telling me is technically what you did was simple, but actually I don't know upstream whether you put in an enormous amount of effort to dive into the customer's needs, interview different customers, brainstorm different types of solutions. I have no insight on that whatsoever. So I cannot answer this question in that context specifically because you haven't told me your story. And I don't want you to tell me the story, by the way. That's not what this session is all about. My point is, the primary thing that you need to be thinking about when you are telling your stories to make them impactful is, are you actually demonstrating the leadership principle, or at least are you demonstrating the behaviors that answer the question? Because you may not understand what the leadership principle is when you're asked the question. So let me just reel back slightly and say, demonstrate the behaviors that the question suggests the interviewer is looking to see in your story. That's the first thing you need to do. The second thing that you need to do, if you're talking about trying to demonstrate impact, it's not about your effort, it's about the outputs. So if the impact of this very simple script change is enormous and you have improved productivity by 300%, well, then it doesn't really matter that your simple technical solution was only simple, particularly if this question is about customer obsession. It's not about technical capabilities. If you've managed to improve efficiency for your customer by 300, 400 odd percent, then that is massively impactful. But again, that context matters. It's about moving the dial from A to B and how far you move that dial. The third thing that you need to think about if you're trying to demonstrate impact and the relevance of your work is when you set up the situation in the first place, you need to make sure that your interviewer understands why this situation is important, why it's significant to either your client or your business. So essentially, you start a story by saying, this is the problem statement. This is why this problem statement is really, really important, why it really, really matters that I solve this. Then you explain what you're trying to achieve, your goal. Then you talk about all of the behaviors that you demonstrated that answer the question that you've just been asked. And then your results are just the impact statement. How did I move the dial from, or what distance did I move the dial, should I say, from point A to point B? That's essentially your triumvirate of impact variables in your answer. Would you add anything, Yevgeny? Was that all coherent?
Very coherent. I'll just add one quick point of philosophy here. Hopefully, it will be helpful for Jen. As we always say here at Day One Careers, Amazon hires people that other companies absolutely hate to let go. And so, by this nature, however many people are competing for your specific role in general, there's a lot of competition for roles at Amazon because a lot of people want to work at Amazon. So it's something that you need to challenge yourself when you're preparing your content to share with Amazon, these stories. You are selling something. Don't sell yourself short. Come with your best sellers, your greatest hits. And then this way, you don't need to ask us if if you did something simple for the customer. Is that okay? Because the stuff that you need to bring to share with Amazon needs to be the stuff that you are the most proud of. I'll just leave you with this thought. Keep challenging yourself. This is the way to make sure that of all the things that you have achieved in your professional career, you're going to bring the best to your job interview. Is that fair?
Yep. Do you want to pick the next one?
Cool. So this one is from Wat Barrow. How do I tell the leadership principle I'm being asked when a question is general? Right. So you might be able to tell what the leadership principle is if you have previously studied the leadership principles and if you manage to figure out what behaviors they're looking for. There's some information on this online. Obviously, within our paid courses, we have an entire section dedicated to explaining to you exactly what behaviors the leadership principles are looking for. And so in this case, if you hear a question, you will be able to connect the dots. The thing is, when you are preparing your stories, it's a good thing to try and map your stories to leadership principles and to connect the dots between the questions and plausible questions or example questions and the leadership principles. But when you're in an actual interview, this is the time, if you've done all your preparation well, there's no need to actually spend any brain energy trying to figure out what LP is being tested. When you're in an actual interview, just focus on really understanding the question to make sure that you're not answering the question that wasn't asked. Take your time, write the question down, do anything, clarify with the interviewer. Do everything you need to do to make sure you really understand what you're looking for. And then from your memory, fish out a story that demonstrates those behaviors that they're asking for to the best of your ability. And then let the chips fall where they may. That would be my guidance. Anything you'd add, Gigi?
Nope. Nothing to add. Okay, so let me pick the next one. Okay. Based on my experience, what are the most challenging roles to hire for and why? Okay, so in my capacity as a bar raiser, I would have been on loops for all sorts of different job families across the organization. And two stand out to me as loops that I just kept going through over and over and over and over. And we could not land a hire on those loops. And it felt like, that film Groundhog Day, where you just keep going over the same thing over and over. And they kept asking me to come back and bar raise on these loops. And in the end, I had to ask them to stop asking me to come back and bar raise on these loops, because I felt that I was becoming a bit jaded by the experience, and I felt they needed a bar raiser with a fresh perspective. So these two roles, one was was it a head of or a principal of public policy for, I think it was the Middle East. And that was really hard to hire for, based on essentially where the candidate pool was coming from, the level of knowledge required for that particular region, and the level of seniority required for that particular region, and the type of people that tended to work in public policy in that particular region being a slight mismatch with the type of person that you look for to hire in Amazon. So that was one. And then the other one, which was rather challenging to hire for, was compensation and benefits. I think economic analyst, that one was. And that was a very, very specific skill set that they just could not land and find someone for. So I don't have a particular answer for what is the job family that is the hardest to recruit for, because job families are actually quite broad, and then you narrow down quite quickly once you get into specific job roles. But those are the specific roles that I found particularly hard to hire for. But when you're talking about your kind of general, kind of a little bit bulk standard roles, product managers, technical program managers, software development engineers, solutions architects, lawyers, product managers, marketing managers, customer solution in AWS, they're all relatively simple to hire for. It's just a question of finding the candidate that raises the bar, because they're not particularly niche roles. With the greatest of respect, there are lots of people in those particular fields out there in the world. Anything you'd add, Yevgeny? I know you've probably got a slightly less broad scope of types of roles that you have interviewed for, at least inside Amazon.
I would say hiring junior roles in Luxembourg, that was challenging.
Why is that?
Because
Too expensive.
Because it's a high cost location, and while if you compare pound for pound, the compensation bands in Luxembourg, at least when I was there, they used to be kind of accounting for that, and they were trying to kind of pay people a bit more. But because for L5s and L4s, you typically folks tend to be at a life stage, kind of a pre-family life stage, if that makes any sense. And there's just not a lot that seems
not a lot of
on.
Appeal in Luxembourg.
It's a great place, but it's just and I guess you need to know places to go out, because it does tend to kind of die early.
Right. So it's not really a function of the fact that the role is hard to recruit for.
It's just a location and band challenge. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to pick the next one?
Yeah. Okay. So hi, I have a look for a cloud support engineer role on Thursday and Friday, and I have looked at the interview panel and noticed that there are 5 technical people and only 1 manager. I'm wondering if this particular interview will be tech focused, or should I still expect to be based on behavioral questions? Right. So the thing is, at Amazon, everyone, regardless of their job family, whether they're technical people or non-technical people, they will be interviewing candidates on behavioral. I guess they will be running behavioral interviews with candidates. So just the fact that your entire loop, or 5 out of 6 people, right, in the loop are technical, it doesn't mean that the loop's going to be technical. The person who you should be asking this question is your recruiter, because the split between technical and non-technical rounds is something that they typically would give you. It would be quite unusual for the entire loop to be only technical. I don't think
there's no way you're getting into Amazon as a cloud support engineer without doing leadership principle because you're a cloud support engineer. So there's going to be customer obsession, there's going to be earned trust, there's going to be ownership. There's no way you're getting in without leadership principle questions, is
No,
there?
it's probably just more reflective of the kind of people who you will be working with side by
Mm.
side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Another question from Jen here. And if I can't come up with an example during an LP interview, should I ask the interviewer for another question, or better to keep up with one? Okay, so I think what you're saying is better to just make something up, or should I ask for another question? So here is the Day One Careers copyrighted solution to this particular problem statement. Here we go. What you do is, if you have a story that you think is kind of going to answer the question, but not quite, you tell the interviewer that. So you say, you can almost say it word for word if you like, if you want to sound like I do. I'm sorry, I don't think I have an exact answer for your question, but I do have something that I think is similar. Could I share that with you in just a few lines, and you tell me whether that's going to work for you? And then you need to proceed and tell them in just a few lines, like 4 or 5 sentences, a summary of the story that you think might work. They then might say, yep, that'll work. And you can just go on and tell your story. If they say, no, I don't think that's going to work for you, at that point, then you should say, in which case, I don't want to waste your time or my opportunity. Could I please have another question? Now, the reason why this is the patented recommended strategy is responsibility. If you were to just give the interviewer your other version of the story and not warn them that it might not be right, it's on your head if the story doesn't match what they're looking for in terms of the question, and you're left with your interviewer saying, they didn't answer my question, that was really irritating, which is, by the way, the most common complaint of all interviewers across the whole of Amazon, that candidates don't actually answer the question. But if you give the interviewer the chance to tell you whether that is going to answer the question for them or not, if it still doesn't answer the question for them, that's not your fault. You gave them the opportunity to tell you whether it was going to work for them or not, and they told you yes. Therefore, if the answer doesn't reflect what they were looking for, that's not on you, that's on them. Smart, huh? So if you have to ask for another question, it isn't the end of the world, but you are much better to give your interviewer strong stories than just make up some nonsense on the spot. The reality is, the Amazon interview question bank's got, I don't know, 120, 130, something like that questions in it. And Amazon recognizes that not everybody is going to have been through a specific experience in their life for every single one of those 120, 150 odd questions. So it is okay to say, please, can I have another question? You just don't want to do it too many times. If you're old and ugly and have been around a long time like myself, I've probably got less leeway in asking for a different question than someone who's bright and sparkly and has only just left college, because they don't have a lot of experience behind them, whereas I've got decades and decades and decades of experience behind me, and therefore I have little excuse to not have at some point experienced over 30 odd years of a career that particular situation. So how many times you can ask for another question, there are no rules. And it's very a matter of preference from a bar raiser's point of view. I would generally say, if I was interviewing someone who was, say, an L4, and they asked me for a new question 4 times, or ask anyone across the loop for a new question 4 or 5 times, wouldn't bother me at all. If I was interviewing an L7, once they hit second or third request for a new question, then I'd be worried that they possibly don't have the breadth of experience that we'd be looking for at Amazon. No exact science, but that's my best guidance for you. Would you add anything, Yevgeny?
No, that's very extensive. Okay.
Okay.
Next one.
Next one.
This is going to be a quick one. In the context of customer obsession, does customer refer specifically to B2C customers? The answer is no. It refers to any entity that consumes the output of your work. So B2C customers, B2B customers, various stakeholders, even individual colleagues, if they, in a particular situation, are your customers. Anything you'd add?
No, I just tend to define it as anyone who is dependent on your output to be successful in their own work.
Should I pick another one? This one
Yeah,
was a
please do,
cop-out.
because that was a cop out, man.
Yeah, okay. Right. All right. How many LP questions or stories are expected to answer during a 25 to 30 minute of LP round? How much time should I ideally spend preparing for each question? Right. It really depends on how they structure your rounds between technical and non-technical questions. If your role is technical, or if your role is functional and the team wants to ask you functional questions during the interview, then the split or the number of LP questions that you have to ask during each and every interview will vary. The best person to ask about the split between technical and non-technical parts of your loop within every interview is your recruiter. In some cases, some loops, they're going to have purely behavioral and purely technical interviews. In some loops, they're going to be a mixed bag. We've seen them all. Just to give you a ballpark, for a typical non-technical round, meaning no functional, no technical questions, only LP questions, it goes 2 leadership principles per interview, and that means I would say, and again, it depends on the seniority, but rough guidance, anything between 1 and 2 questions per leadership principle. So in total, plan to answer between 3 and 4 questions, more likely 3 than 4. But again, it's a very, very, very rough ballpark. It depends on seniority. And then the next question is, how much time should you ideally spend preparing for each question? Honestly, this is where...
Yeah, that's a how long's a piece of string question.
We don't know. Look,
no one knows. It's not just we don't know. No one knows.
No one knows. I would say, if you think about our paid products, so if you were to invest in any of our paid products, typically we recommend between a week to a week and a half to just go through all the content and get yourself ready. But per question, no one knows.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. Let's just pick this one. I haven't read it yet, so hopefully it makes sense. If I have a project experience focused on enhancing productivity or systems for B2B customers, but it doesn't directly impact B2C customers, would that still be considered as a good example? There's so many holes in this set of information. I cannot possibly answer that question. It literally, I apologize, Jack, but it's a nonsensical question for me to be able to answer, because it doesn't matter what it is, who you're targeting at, who it directly impacts. What matters is the question that you were asked and whether it actually answers the question or not. So I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to skip over this one, because literally it doesn't make sense for me to be able to answer without meaning to be disrespectful in any way. Okay, Asha. In a loop interview with 4-hour-long rounds. Oh, okay, we've just covered this one. How many stories would you expect to be needed to make sure you cover most questions? So Yevgeny's just said how many questions you can potentially expect to be asked in a particular interview. Looking at in a slightly different dimension, we would recommend that you have at least 2 examples ready for each leadership principle. If you can get your recruiter to remove some of the leadership principles from the list, that would be highly useful to you, because then you can focus on less leadership principles. Generally, most people are not interviewed on strive to be Earth's best employer, success and scale brings broad responsibility, and frugality. And then anyone who isn't a line manager tends to not be tested on hire and develop the best. A little bit of a tip for you there. But other than that, it's all fair game. So it's definitely worth getting your recruiter to give you some guidance on which ones you will be tested on. And then our recommendation is to have at least 2 stories per leadership principle. Do you want to pick the next one, Yevgeny?
Yeah. Have you ever hired a candidate for tech intern role whose responses to behavioral questions strongly aligned with Amazon's leadership principles, but technical skills weren't as strong? So full disclaimer, I've never hired anyone for any technical roles. That being said, I would be extremely surprised if, at least by way of policy, Amazon would compromise on either cultural fit, meaning are you an Amazonian, and your technical bar. How your interview plays out and how individual hiring managers and interviewers rate your experience may differ, but I would be extremely suspicious of anyone thinking that if I'm stronger here and not as strong there, Amazon would make a compromise. I don't think they would, because there's just a lot of folks who are interviewing, and also there's this thing called a bar, right? And there's a bar raiser, and they're going to be assessing you for both technical and non-technical bar, and the bar raiser is there to make sure that these compromises are not met. Would you broadly agree, Gigi?
No.
No, really?
Sorry.
Go ahead then.
Kind of yes and kind of no, right? So there's no one rule that fits everybody, right? There are always edge cases. And I have definitely bar raised on loops and sat in loops with other bar raisers when I was a bar raiser in training, where the discussion has been had that the candidate was extraordinary when it came to their stories about the leadership principles and their behaviors, but that there were one or two technical gaps in their experience. And then the debate goes into, would we regret not hiring this person because of those gaps? Then the conversation tends to become, well, how easy is it to fill those gaps? Now, if the answer then falls in, actually, it's really hard to fill those gaps. There's a really steep learning curve on this particular piece, and we just don't have high confidence that we could get this person up to scratch in sufficient time, then it's a no hire. If the answer is actually these skills are relatively easy to learn and they can learn them on the job and we can assign someone to buddy them and coach them up, the answer becomes okay, so they're extraordinary when it comes to the leadership principles, and there are gaps, but they're easy to fill gaps. That can turn into a hire. So, as a general principle, yes, I agree with you. You're always raising the bar and you don't want to compromise on anything. But when you're actually kind of in the trenches, as it were, and you have these edge cases, then actually those compromises can be made sometimes, as long as they are tolerable compromises. Okay, moving on then. Oh, this one's a quick one. Dinesh, can you apply for multiple jobs at the same time? Will the hiring managers be aware of this? Yes, you can, and yes, they are. Moving on. I have a loop interview this week for a new account manager position. There's a business case portion, yeah, which involves Excel on top of the behavioral portion. Any tips on what to expect from this? Yes. So I have what I believe to be kind of at least a quick overview of what I think you can face, basically from having worked with a whole bunch of account managers who've gone through the interview process. Yevgeny can tell me whether he's heard something different from account managers that he's been working with. So it's a simple kind of case study where you're given a whole bunch of data points about a particular client. This is their CPA, this is their CP something, this is their ROI, this is their cost base, this is this, that, and the other. Your client wants to achieve X. Based on the variables that you have here, how would you help them achieve that goal? That's my understanding of what the account manager case study is broadly going to be about. Have you heard anything different, Yevgeny?
Um, so I've heard cases like these. I've also heard of teams pulling together these cases literally by themselves. So there's no one standardized assessment.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Do you want to I think Japnit's question will be quite easy to cover.
Yeah, and the answer is yes.
Moving on.
Moving on. How to handle age-related treatments. Generally, if you're younger than the person with whom you'd be working, if you get selected, I see interviewer gets disappointed and treats the candidate differently. Can you describe? I think
There's a
there's
separate question
a
there, yeah.
separate question, right? Okay. Okay. I can't really interpret Dinesh's question. Like, what do you actually mean? As in, like, are you concerned that you're going to be discriminated during your interviews or during your loop because of your age, or are you going to be discriminated whilst you are working at Amazon? So it's
Yeah,
very hard.
I think he's saying, how do you deal with being interviewed by someone younger than you? Because in their experience, the interviewer gets disappointed when they realize that the candidate is older than them.
To be honest, I don't know. like it shouldn't be your concern in terms of like, don't psych yourself up that you're younger than someone, older than someone. So I was interviewed and hired by someone who was younger than me, and we got along absolutely fine. Obviously, if you suspect that there is some sort of age discrimination going on in whichever way, then you should definitely raise it with the recruiter, because that's definitely, most definitely would go against a million of Amazon's policies. But I don't have anything else to say to you. Anything you would add, Gigi?
No, I mean, that's just not something I experienced or I've recognized in my time interviewing and bar raising with Amazon. That doesn't mean to say it doesn't exist. That doesn't mean to say that it's more prevalent in certain cultures than in other cultures. But from a policy point of view, exactly as you say, Evgeny, it would go massively against any of Amazon's philosophies. Okay. I will pick the next one. Can stories in the hiring manager interview be repeated at the loop? Okay. We would advise you to avoid repeating stories between rounds if you possibly can. Although we appreciate that's hard because lots of questions that get asked, and it's not always possible to come up with many fresh stories. So if you are going to repeat a story between different rounds, what we recommend you do is, rather than repeat the story, you repeat the situation and create a different version of the story for that situation. Ideally, you want to create stories that have their origins in very different leadership principles. So leadership principles are kind of, you can theme them up. So customer obsession and earn trust, they're kind of people-y type leadership principles. So you can kind of theme them up. Invent and simplify and think big, they're kind of ideas types leadership principles. So you can kind of theme those up together. So our recommendation would be you take the story that you use in your hiring manager or phone screen 1, phone screen 2 rounds, take it back to its bare bones of the originating situation and create a different story from it. So, for example, you might create 2 version stories of that situation, one version being customer obsession, the other version being dive deep, because those leadership principles do not cross over each other in any way, shape, or form. Dive deep is much more technical, analytical. Customer obsession is much more people, emotional type things. And if you were to create 2 different stories leaning into those 2 different leadership principles from a single situation, you're going to end up with stories that actually sound quite different. That would be our advice on that one.
Beautiful. Should we?
Oh, it's over time. Yes. Do we want to wrap up then?
Yes. I do want to answer Dinesh's question about
Yes.
our AI tools, and then we
Mhm.
can go to the freebies.
Sure.
So, Dinesh, your question is, can you describe your products from Amazon interviews? Can I talk to that AI like a real person, or is it typing based? So, if you think about Amazon Interview Success System, which is our flagship product, typically, and I say I would separate it into 2 parts. The first part being what I would call theory, roughly. And this is basically videos and PDFs that teach you everything you need to know on Amazon's unique and peculiar culture, on every single leadership principle down to what behaviors they're looking for, and then how to find the situations in your career that respond to those leadership principles and how to convert them into highly impactful stories. So that's the theoretical part. The practical part is indeed powered by our AI tools. First tool is an AI story bank, where you upload your stories in the format that we prescribe and teach you in the theoretical part. And then you can review your stories with our AI. The tool is not conversational. We didn't want to build another chatbot because you need to pre-build your stories, and then when we evaluate them, we give you a multi-page evaluation on a load of different points, from how well your story fits the leadership principle to how well the seniority signals and indicators are flowing through your story. So it's not a chatbot product, it's a review product. Now, what you can do is you can use the audio button to narrate the parts of the stories into the system, and then if that's something that you feel more naturally kind of more inclined to, and we will transcribe them in in the back end, and then we will still give you a text-based review. So that's how they work. Now, should we talk about the free tools? Do you want me to do that, or do you want to introduce them?
That's all right. I will just pop this up here. Okay, folks. So see this URL down here. At the end of this URL is, as I said earlier, the best Amazon freebie interview preparation stuff you'll find on the web. There are, I think, 3 things at the end of this, maybe 4, but we'll see as we run through. The first thing is there's a little free course there about customer obsession. We break down through our own unique learning model exactly how you can understand customer obsession, the different types of customer obsession, which will help trigger some ideas from your career history as to what types of stories you could use. It then has content in there that explains to you what the interviewer is really looking for in your answers, so you can really make sure that you have the right behaviors demonstrated in your story. And then the final thing in there is a little mock interview, me interviewing myself. Obviously, you would never know that we were the same person, just to give you a sense of what it might look like in the actual interview itself. So that's the first thing. Second thing that does is once you actually take that course, it gives you access to our Heartbeat community. We have probably over 4,000 people now who are members of that community, all of who are currently or have in the past been going through the Amazon interview process. In that community, you can make friends with those people. You can join forces with people and do buddy mock interviews together. You can also use a AI chatbot, another AI chatbot that we've created. That AI chatbot is trained on all of the content on the YouTube channel. So if you have questions and you don't want to have to trawl the whole YouTube channel for it, you can just ask the chatbot Andy, and he will answer the question for you. The last thing is 3 things that you have access to if you follow that link is we have created what we call an Amazon interview preparation tool pack. It has a few useful models to help you prepare, but most importantly, it has a list of what we call plausible Amazon interview questions. They're not the actual exact Amazon interview questions. We don't have access to those, and even if we did, we wouldn't share them with you because they're confidential. But we understand the leadership principles so well. We have asked those questions so many times throughout our Amazon career, and as coaches, we are able to make up our own version of those types of questions that are incredibly useful when it comes to your interview preparation. So you can download that tool pack and use those interview questions to help practice how you would approach answering a question. Won't be the exact question, so don't build an exact answer for every single question in that tool pack, but there's about like 124 odd of them there, and you can really use them for practice to help hone your skills for how you answer interview questions in the moment. Okay, so that's it for today, folks. Thank you very, very much for joining us. We are very grateful that you show up whilst we show up. Do make use of those free resources. If you do watch any of the content on the channel, please do just give it a thumbs up. It's like a millisecond of your time compared to the effort we put into making that video. So please do just give it a thumbs up. If we haven't been able to answer your questions today, please just drop those questions anywhere into any video comment on the YouTube channel, and we will get back to you. Good luck if you have an interview coming up. We have our fingers very, very tightly crossed for you. And if you are coming back next week, we look forward to seeing you then.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.